I want to acknowledge our university and community supporters, University of Iowa's international programs and the University of Iowa's honors program, as well as the Stanley UI Foundation support organization for their financial support. And I want to thank today's special financial sponsors, Dave and Diane Martin and Midwest One Bank. At this time, it's my pleasure to turn the mic over to Karen Walksmith, the Associate Director of International Fellowships and the Fulbright Program Advisor for the U of I International Programs, who will introduce each of our speakers. And before actually giving her the mic, I want to acknowledge that under Karen's leadership, the University of Iowa has once again set a new record for the total number of Fulbright student awardees. So let us welcome Karen Walksmith.
Thank you so much. I will begin with an overview of the Fulbright program at the University of Iowa before introducing these three awardees. So here you'll see photographs of our 16 Fulbright awardees this year, which is an all-time record for the University of Iowa. And just a reminder that the Fulbright program, as you well know from the past 2 years, was created by Senator J. William Fulbright in 1946 and is designed to increase understanding between people of the U.S. and other countries by providing participants opportunities to study, teach, conduct research, and contribute to funding solutions to shared international concerns. Recipients of Fulbright grants are selected on the basis of academic or professional achievement, as well as demonstrated leadership potential in their fields. Again this year, I'm happy to announce that the University of Iowa was named a top producer of U.S. Fulbright students and nationally for the second time. This year, as you can see with these figures, we had 41 applicants. We had a record number of semifinalists, that is 24 out of the 41 became semifinalists in January. We have had 16 awardees, and we still have 14 alternates who are pending and could still, very unlikely, but could happen last year, could still get awards this year. 4 of them. Here's where our UI students are going. Many different countries. We have 2 going to Argentina, and 2 were awarded to Spain as well. So a very full overview of different locations that they're going to. Very exciting. And I thought you might be interested in seeing the fields that they applied in. We have 2 creative writers, one who's from the Center for the Book, in book and paper making, in archaeology, biology, history, public health, and we have a record 9 English teaching assistants who will be going all over the world. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about the Fulbright application process. As you can see here, 3 of these students who are working hard over their charts actually received Fulbrights this year. So I'm going to say a word about how these 3 students that you see before you have come to be here today. Each of them has undergone a rigorous selection process, beginning with 2 campus interviews in September, followed by a review in November by a National Fulbright Committee of expert scholars in their individual countries, and for the English teaching assistants, experts in English as a second language. Having reached the next semifinalist stage in January, they were then reviewed and chosen by the Fulbright commissions in their individual countries. This review process included embassy officials, Fulbright awardees in each country, government officials, businessmen, and others. In Nicholas's case, he underwent a 3rd grueling phone interview with representatives from the Fulbright Commission in the United Kingdom, along with members of Imperial College London. He was questioned thoroughly about both his academic plans, and what he could bring to the larger community in London outside of his scientific studies. For those of you who know Professor Christopher Squire, a frequent ICFRC host at these talks with some personal experience in England, his support in preparing Nicholas for the crucial Fulbright UK phone interview was a key factor in Nicholas's success. A few statistics before I go on. The UK receives more than 900 applications annually for 44 total placements. Nicholas is only the 8th UI student to receive a Fulbright to the UK since the program's inception 71 years ago. He is the first UI awardee since 1994, and he received the only Fulbright U.S. Student Award to Imperial College London for 2017. Finally, all 3 of these dedicated students were selected as finalists in March and April, and were carefully screened and chosen by the United States State Department Bureau of Cultural and Educational Affairs to serve as outstanding representatives of the United States. Each of them has shown dedication and integrity as they moved forward in their bright paths in the past year. I hope that you will wish them well in their last days of preparation for what will surely be an exciting Fulbright year ahead. I now present them to you, and I'll give you all of their names, and then they will introduce themselves. Alexis Lexi Cook from Solon, Iowa, graduated from Iowa with a BS with honors in human physiology in a pre-med track with minors in Spanish, psychology, and chemistry. She received a Fulbright English Teaching Assistant Award to the La Rioja region of Spain. Kelsey O'Donnell from Sargeant Bluff, Iowa, well known to Foreign Relations Council audiences as an intern, graduated with a BA with honors and high distinction in International Studies and Anthropology. With her Fulbright English Teaching Assistant Award to Taiwan, Kelsey will teach English at a school on the island of Kinmen. Nicholas, or Niko, McCarty grew up in Geneva, Illinois, and moved to Iowa for his BS in biochemistry. He graduated with high distinction and was an Iowa Biosciences Academy Scholar. In 2016, he received a Barry M. Goldwater Scholarship for college sophomores and juniors who intend to pursue research careers in the natural sciences. Nico will study at the Imperial College London to pursue a 1-year Master of Research in Systems and Synthetic Biology.
So hi, my name is Lexi Koch, and I have a English teaching assistantship to the region of La Rioja in Spain. And so I wouldn't say that I'm your typical Fulbright English teaching assistant because I'm not ever planning on becoming a teacher. I actually want to become a doctor someday. I took my medical college admissions test less than a week ago, and I'm currently applying to med schools. So if everything goes well, cross your fingers for me, I will start med school in the fall of 2018. However, I don't think that most people realize how important it is for doctors to be good teachers and to be able to communicate ideas at a level that their patients can understand. And being able to break down complicated ideas and knowledge that has become second nature is really not a simple thing to be able to do. I've seen and chatted a lot of doctors who are really, really brilliant people, but they lack that intercommunication with their patients because they're not able to explain their diagnoses and their treatments so that their patients can actually understand what they're saying. And if anyone has been around a 3-year-old when during their crazy question phase and tried to explain why water is wet or why their ball falls but their balloon floats to the sky in terms that they can understand, you know that it is really, really hard. And so with my Fulbright, I'm hoping not only to improve my ability to communicate ideas, but also to improve my future patient interactions and understanding of different cultures, and so that I'll be able to communicate well with patients that are American children or Spanish mothers or even Saudi Arabian men. So when I decided to apply for the Fulbright, I actually didn't think I had any chance of getting it. I was a human physiology major on a pre-med track. I had worked in 3 different research labs and had a lot of hospital-related volunteer experience, but all of that would have been really great if I had wanted to apply for a research grant. But instead, I decided that I wanted to go teach English in a country that I had never been to before. But luckily, I had Karen as an advisor in about a year to get my ducks in a row before actually submitting my application. And when I went and met with Karen for the first time to talk about my grant application, I actually felt moderately prepared. I didn't think I was the perfect candidate, but I was at least mediocre, so that was good. I brought my list of extracurriculars, brought in my resume, had my country picked out. I used to teach swim lessons, and I even had been studying Spanish for 6 years. And so I started talking about all this to Karen, and she was less than impressed with any of it. And she started asking me these questions and made me realize that I wasn't even close to that Fulbright level, and I had a really long way to go to get there. And so by the time I left her office, I had this giant list of organizations I needed to check out, the dates of Fulbright workshops, and the actual names of specific librarians who could help me research this country that I wanted to go live in for a year. And so at that point, I started researching different organizations in the community that taught English to ESL students of different ages. I went and observed some classes at Kirkwood and contacted some people that ran English conversation hours. I had also been an honors writing fellow since my sophomore year at the university, so I worked with students and tutored them on their class papers, but I never really had a lot of experience interacting with ESL students. And so I contacted my advisor for that program and went through a training to actually become a tutor in the Writing Center, where I'd actually have that communication with ESL students and practice teaching English. And so while I got all my teaching experiences squared away, I still had the problem of not having the slightest connection to Spain. My family is German. We never hosted a Spanish exchange student, and somehow I had never met a single person from Spain. But luckily, I had enough money to afford exactly 1 month of a study abroad program over the summer in San Sebastian, Spain. And there it is, okay. And so I took a course in Spanish contemporary poetry that actually counted towards my minor. I found the cheapest plane ticket I could, which was out to Zurich, Switzerland, and figured that I would just kind of backpack my way up from there to San Sebastian, Spain. I'm still alive, so it worked out. But by the time I crossed into Spain, the first city that I stopped in was Barcelona, and I was really excited at this point to be in a country where I could speak the language. And so I went up to a local man to ask for directions to the address of this place that I was staying at. And I said it in Spanish, felt really, really prepared, and he just kind of looked at me and stopped. And then he replied in English. Like, you know that your Spanish is really bad when someone replies in English. But luckily, my month in Spain did improve my conversational Spanish to a level that I was evaluated at an advanced level when I got back in the fall. And so I submitted my Fulbright application while concurrently looking for programs that I could go to, or trips that I could go on that would improve my Spanish to more of a fluent level that I wanted to hopefully be at by the time I got over to Spain, if I did indeed get it. And I stumbled across a volunteer program that was in Guatemala over winter break. Can I see it? Oh, there it is. Go back. And it actually ended up being one of the best experiences I could have had. We volunteered at a local clinic down there to build them a waiting room for their patients. And we spent time with residents at a sort of nursing home, which was really eye-opening. And I was also given the opportunity to teach English to a group of firemen. and take a course to become certified to teach English as a foreign language. And so when I got back to the US in January, I heard back from the Fulbright program that I had become a semifinalist. And I was finally feeling good about my ability to speak Spanish and teach English. And so throughout the spring, I just kind of continued the things that I'd been doing, waiting for to hear back about my Fulbright status. And I continued to stay involved with a program called Girls on the Run. And when I was submitting my application a few months prior, I had already been involved with Girls on the Run, and I actually based my community engagement project on that program. And for those of you that don't know, Girls on the Run is a program for 3rd through 6th grade girls that has a curriculum that kind of incorporates running with lessons about inner beauty and self-confidence and friendship and all of these really wonderful things. And it challenges the idea that these girls have to conform to society's unattainable ideals of beauty and give in to peer pressure, which is something that I and a lot of girls really struggle with growing up. And so Girls on the Run kind of aims to give these girls the tools to be comfortable in their own skin and to be the person that they want to be. And it's really, really incredible to see some of the changes that these girls go through during that program. And hopefully in my time in Spain, I can adapt it to suit the girls' needs over there and the society's different problems. And I'll see what I can come up with. But coming back to the present, I actually received my placement for the school that I'll be teaching at in La Rioja, which, for those of you that don't know, it's that red region that's really small in the northeast corner. But I'll be teaching elementary education at a school named CEIP Via Patro in Lardero, Spain. And I'm just hoping that my time there will make me a better communicator and in turn make me a better physician eventually. And so I'm excited for the adventures and the challenges that I'll face next year. And I want to thank you all for listening to my journey.
Kelsey, and my Fulbright English teaching assistantship is in Taiwan. So like Karen and Lexi have already talked about, the Fulbright U.S. student program is really designed to increase the mutual understanding between the people of the United States and the people of other countries. So my main purpose in Taiwan is to learn as much as I can about the Taiwanese culture and language, as well as teach them about American culture and English, and we can exchange our ideas. And the purpose is so I can bring that information back to the United States and bring awareness to people here about Taiwan. So Fulbright Taiwan was created in 1957. So actually this year is their 60th anniversary. So there's a lot of events and celebrations going on right now for that. Since they were created, they have financed over 1,300 U.S. Fulbright grantees, and 4 of these have been UI students in the past 3 years. Actually, last summer at this lecture, you heard Destiny Gui speak. She's been over in Taiwan for a year now, and she'll be coming back in a couple weeks from her Fulbright and starting medical school. So I'm sure you all already know where Taiwan is, but I just wanted to show you this map so you can kind of get an idea of the placement in the region. It's just southeast of China, and where I'll be is actually a small island called Kinmen, and it's closer to China than it is to Taiwan, even though it is still technically a part of Taiwan. It's right next to Xiamen, which is about a 20-minute boat ride. So, but actually I don't think I can visit China unless I get a separate visa for that, but we'll see what happens. So Kinmen consists of about 12 islands. 2 of those are slightly bigger and are actually populated by the Kinmenese people. What's interesting about Kinmen is that it's a former military island. So during the Taiwanese Strait crisis, there was a lot of battles going on between China and Taiwan on that island. It was demilitarized in the mid-1990s, though, and the control was given back to the civilian government. I have some photos here of Kinmen where I'll be. Obviously, there's a lot of beaches there. The photo at the bottom is actually, you can view Xiamen, which is in China, from the island itself. And there's just some pictures of the architecture and a statue on top of a mountain. So one of the interesting things about Kinmen is that most of their economy is based on tourism. And they also sell these knives called Maestro Wu knives, which are made out of old artillery shells that are left over from the military period, which is just an interesting fact. So why did I choose Taiwan, and why did I decide to apply for the Fulbright? So I participated in a program here at the university called Bridging Domestic and Global Diversity Program. And this program was my first experience actually getting to interact with international students, working with them together as a team, learning about leadership and diversity. And I learned a lot from a lot of students from China, from Taiwan, from other areas around Asia. And it got me really interested in learning more about the culture and studying the language. Last summer, I worked as an ESL student teacher over at Kirkwood Community College, and I worked with the adult population, immigrant population in Iowa City, and I got to practice my conversation skills with them and helping them learn English grammar. I've been taking Mandarin for a year now. I started back in the fall semester at the university. However, in Kinmen, actually, they speak a Hokkien dialect, and they also speak special Kinmenese dialect, which is actually off of Taiwanese language. So, however, since it is a tourist island, they will, I assume, be speaking Mandarin quite a bit as well. So that'll be interesting. I just graduated in May with a bachelor's degree in International Studies and Anthropology. And of course, I've been an intern with the Iowa City Foreign Relations Council since last June. So a lot of things that I've learned from this internship through listening to all the different lectures and learning about international issues and meeting awesome people that have inspired me to apply for the Fulbright and keep going with my goals. So a little bit about my English teaching assistantship. I actually leave July 30th, so in a little less than a month. And the first month is just the orientation process. So while there in Kinmen, I will be learning skills about teaching. I'll be learning language and cultural classes, and also fun things like learning how to ride a scooter and taking my driver's license test. So the whole grant is 11 months, and I'll be there the entire time until June 30th approximately of next year. I don't have a school placement yet. This is a picture of one of the elementary schools that I could be teaching at. I will definitely be teaching in an elementary school. However, there's about 18 different elementary schools in this small island. Those schools are pretty small in size. So during the orientation, I'll get to tour all the different schools and rank which ones that I think I would fit best in before I'm placed. One unique thing about teaching in Kinmen is that it's the only placement in Taiwan where you get the opportunity to be a solo teacher. About half my experience will be co-teaching with another teacher in the classroom, but some of it will also be teaching on my own. So that's an exciting thing about being placed on Kinmen, even though it's not in mainland Taiwan. So a lot of you probably read my biography about my community engagement project, which was to volunteer with Girl Scouts of Taiwan. So I chose that project because I was in Girl Scouts for 12 years growing up, and I thought it would be a great way to use my skills. However, when I got my placement, I realized that there is no Girl Scouts of Taiwan on Kinmen. It's only in the mainland Taiwan. So I won't be able to do that project anymore, sadly, but it's all about being adaptable. So I have lots of different ideas. In Kinmen, there's an English village, which is a community project where each room in this building, I think there's about 7 rooms, is supposed to be an immersive language experience. So each room, like one's an airport, one's a restaurant, they're each in a specific situation, and when the students go into the room, they're fully immersed in that situation. So you teach them vocabulary about what would they do if they're in an airport, what the things they would say. So I'm hoping to volunteer there. This picture is actually from the English Village in the airport room, and Laura Wang is actually in the back row. She is a UI alumna who did her Fulbright ETA in Taiwan this past year as well. Additionally, I hope to volunteer at a local library, getting involved in a reading program, or just helping out however I can. And I'm really interested in doing a running or hiking club. There's a huge mountain right in the middle of Kinmen, and it's a national park there, so I know there's a lot of hiking opportunities. And finally, I definitely want to continue my Mandarin training. There's no official coursework to study Mandarin on Kinmen, but there is one university, and they can pair you with a conversation partner. So I plan to do a conversation exchange with someone there. And what am I going to do when I get back? That remains up in the air, but I would like to work with international students in the future. So I really think that being in Kinmen and learning from the Taiwanese people, learning the culture, learning the language, will help me to help other international students in the future back in the United States, hopefully at like a university level. Thank you.
So I think Karen gave me a very generous introduction, but really a lot of people helped me throughout the entire process. But I wasn't going to apply for a Fulbright. I'm a scientist. I didn't think that Fulbrights were for scientists. I had never heard of one of my mentors. I think it's working. I had never heard of one of my mentors being a Fulbright scholar. I'd heard of, Rhodes Scholars or Marshall Scholars or all these other things that go to the United Kingdom. So I wasn't going to apply, and I was at the Spring Undergraduate Research Festival, and Karen came up to me and she's like, "Nicholas, when are you starting your application?" I said, "You better come to my office." So I did, and also, to be honest, so I'm going to Imperial College London. I didn't even know that was a university a year ago, probably. But the honors program, and Kelly Thornburg, I have to give a shout out to Kelly Thornburg because she came back from the UK and she was like, "Nico, I think you'd fit amazingly here. Everyone's a nerd. It's going to be amazing." So I looked into it and I was like, it is the coolest school in the world. And I'll show you some pictures and you guys will be like, this is the coolest thing. So a little bit of background is, I'm a biochemist, but I study diabetes and how diabetes is connected to heart failure. So about 60% of all diabetes-related deaths are actually heart attacks and things like stroke. So I work in a lab. I work in the ABLE lab. That's our lab in the bottom right. And we essentially study the molecular mechanisms, the protein interactions governing diabetes, insulin resistance, and how that leads to heart attacks and a heightened risk for heart attacks. And we use transgenic mice to do that. So we genetically engineer mice. And that genetic engineering will come up a little bit later too. And really my project focuses on this class of proteins called glucose transporters. And it's the proteins that take in sugar from the bloodstream so that your cells can run and everything goes well. And these proteins have a lot of problems in diabetics, but I study why there's problems and things like that. So next year I'll be going off to a different place. This is Imperial's campus. An aerial view of Imperial's campus. That's the Royal Albert Hall, that dome there. It's a famous music hall and concert hall. This is a different view. This is from the other side. And you can see that Imperial College borders Hyde Park. So it sits right on Hyde Park in London, in South Kensington. So it's about 30 minutes from University College London. It's by Queen's College, King's College, all the colleges that are in London. And essentially what I'll be doing while I'm there is I'll be doing a 1-year full-time course. So I'll be there for a full 12 months. I leave September 5th and I have orientation. So I was talking about this before, but so orientation moves around every year. The UK Fulbright grantees always have an orientation in September, and it moves around to Scotland and Northern Ireland and Wales and all these different places in the UK. And for this orientation, they picked Imperial College London. They picked London. So I won't be having it'll be a fun orientation, but I would have liked to have gone somewhere else. But so I'll be there for a full 12 months. From September 30th to September 30th is my course. And the first 11 weeks of that course are classes. So you only spend 11 weeks actually learning material before you start in the lab full time. So I start basically. Synthetic biology is all about genetic engineering, building genomes. I'll go into this a little bit more, but essentially they take two types of people. They take people from the physical, natural sciences like physics, and people from the biological sciences like biology, chemistry. And what they want you to do is if you don't know how to computer program, for example, like you're a biologist, your first course is computer programming, computer science, physics, things like that. But then everyone starts taking classes together in theoretical systems biology, which is how gene networks interact with one another in your body. So it's taking this big data approach. We can look at every single gene in the human body, every single protein that they encode, and we study how these interact at a very complex level using algorithms and things like that. Synthetic biology is building new genes. So how can we take things found in nature and put them into other organisms to give organisms new functions? And then there's classes in advanced technology and biotechnology. A lot of medical applications for this. And specifically, the person I'll be working with is this guy. He's probably the most responsive person I've ever talked to in my life. I was reading the application. It says, it looks really good to have a letter of affiliation when you apply to a university. They would like to see that you have reached out to that university ahead of time. So I emailed this guy because I read his research, and I was like, this guy's the coolest guy in the world. And he responded in 7 minutes or so. And he goes, what do I have to do? He's like, I'd love to write you a letter, whatever you need. Which I think was an easier situation than some other people looking for affiliations. And his title is, he's a reader in synthetic genome engineering. So what he does, he's the United Kingdom leader. There's an international consortium going on right now that most people have never heard of. But just like in 2003, when we published the results of the Human Genome Project, right? We sequenced the human genome for the first time. It was all the rage. It was an international collaboration. What this guy's doing is, he's the UK lead. The actual lead of the entire project is at NYU in New York. But what they're doing is they're building a yeast cell, which is a eukaryotic cell, completely from scratch. So they're building the DNA in test tubes. They're splicing the DNA together to build millions and millions and millions of base pairs of DNA completely artificially. And they're going to see if they can make the world's first truly synthetic eukaryotic cell. So that's why I was drawn to this guy, because he's doing, it's crazy. And this is the building that his lab space is in. So basically what I'll be doing is programming cells. Just like you program a computer, we can write algorithms and essentially implant genes into cells to give them new functions. So we could make cells grow red if they detect arsenic in your water. We could use a piece of paper, dip the paper in the water, and it would change to red to say that there's arsenic in the water. So this has already been done. There's new ways to test for Ebola using paper strips as well. We essentially make cells onto paper strips. You can get a blood sample from a patient, and it'll change colors depending on what strain of Ebola they have, so you can improve your diagnoses. There's all kinds of ways that you can program cells to improve human health. What I'll be doing is, since I have this background in metabolism, and that's what I've been studying, and this is just meant to display something. This is all the chemical reactions going on in your body every single second. All these things. This is what biochemists study. It's all these pathways. These are all the things happening in your body. Every one of these nodes represents an enzyme or a protein that's doing something in your body. And they're always moving. You eat a meal. What happens now to your body? What is your liver doing? What is your heart doing? It's very complicated. So what I'm doing is I'm simplifying it. It's a little more simple in something like an E. coli cell or a bacterial cell. And I'm essentially changing the way that their metabolism works so that you can get cells to produce drugs, hypertension drugs. You can get cells to produce biofuels, so new petroleum sources. And this is already being done. You can grow these things up in vats. You can optimize their metabolism so that they produce copious amounts of pharmaceuticals, and then you scrape it off the top. And all of a sudden you have a refined pharmaceutical agent that's thousands of times cheaper than conventional chemical methods. And a very famous example of this being done is a guy at UC Berkeley. His name is Jay Kiesling. He created an anti-malarial drug that is harvested from a seasonal plant. It's very expensive, but it has like a 99% cure rate. It's a very effective anti-malarial drug. And he built a new metabolism pathway in yeast so that yeast could produce this drug. And this has already been commercialized. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation funded that research, and it's already being done now. So this drug became thousands of times cheaper in a matter of 2 years or so. So that's what I'll be working on, things like that, to manufacture drugs. Back to zoom things back a little bit. Imperial College is very notable for their research in synthetic biology. They're very good at this. They're probably, in my opinion, they're the leading United Kingdom synthetic biology center. The University of Edinburgh in Scotland is also a very good center for synthetic biology. But they have all kinds of resources there. And when I say resources, I mean things like DNA foundries. So they have robots, entire rooms and buildings that are just robots where you type in a DNA sequence and it prints out the DNA sequence. So that's what you're seeing here. You essentially could log into that computer, type in, hey, I want this sequence of DNA, and it says, okay, come back in an hour and we'll have your DNA for you. So they have things like that. And they're commercializing these. They have a lot of partnerships with MIT, so they collaborate on a lot of things. Lots of biotechnology applications are happening at Imperial College London. I'm also excited to go to London, and I chose that as the school I wanted to apply to because I'm a kind of a Roman history buff, an amateur Roman history buff. I've taken a lot of classes, never got a minor in it or anything, but I took a lot of classes in Roman history, and if you want to talk about Roman history, I could talk for days. Essentially after Caesar, the fall of Caesar and the rise of the Roman Empire. But so I'm excited to see things like that. And I'm excited to see things like this, which is an old cult of Mithras. So one of the cults that existed in these Roman towns. London was a Roman town. Caesar invaded, but he was never successful, and he couldn't hold the Britons back because they kept revolting. So it wasn't until Claudius took over the island that they really established a foothold. And Claudius established Londinium, which is where modern-day London is. So underground, you can see these old pagan religions. I don't want to say pagan because they really were, I guess to the Romans they were pagan. But one of them that was popular among soldiers was the cult of Mithras. Mithras is famous because he was like the warrior's god, essentially. So they had these temples underground where they would set up long benches like this, and they would eat meat and drink beer next to Mithras. So I'm excited to see stuff like that. So that's my presentation. Thanks.
Okay, the first question is for Niko. Niko, would you come up to the microphone, please? And this is a very practical question. Niko, how can you afford to live in London?
Oh, wow. Well, I can't afford to live in London. My college is in South Kensington, which is one of the most expensive real estate centers in the world. So I can't afford to live there. So I'm living in Bloomsbury, around Bloomsbury. And they give me a stipend. It won't cover everything, but it's like £14,000 stipend. So it's very generous. And I'm very excited, but I'll be very poor. So send your donations.
The next question is for Kelsey. And that question is, did the United States' lack of official diplomatic relations with Taiwan present any difficulties when applying?
No, actually. So the United States and Taiwan have unofficial relations, and they actually have pretty strong unofficial relations. So I didn't have any difficulty in applying. There's the TECO Center. It's the Taiwanese, not quite an embassy, but it's the place where I applied for my visa. It's right in Chicago. So I just called them up and mailed them all my things. They hired Taiwanese people that work there, and I didn't have any problems.
Okay, great. The Fulbright program, by the way, is in 140 countries. And that number of countries expands every year. They make different diplomatic agreements with different countries. So it's a constantly changing landscape. The newest one this year is in Timor-Leste. There's another question for Niko. And he says, the question is, have you studied the ethics of the type of work you will be doing?
Yeah, it can be ethically questionable, but so you might have heard of CRISPR. It came out of Jennifer Doudna's lab at UC Berkeley, and it's being used by scientists at MIT. And it's essentially a better way to engineer DNA, and you can use it in humans. The Chinese government is already using it in humans. So the question is, where do you draw the line in terms of the benefits versus the risks? For the type of research I'm doing, I'm not doing any sort of human engineering. I'm doing bacterial engineering. So a big question is, what happens if this bacterial strain leaves the laboratory, leaves the industrial manufacturing complex, and gets out into the environment? And that's a big concern. And essentially what we do is we engineer in kill switches so that these bacteria can only live in the presence of a certain nutrient that we put in their broth. And we pick a very weird, these are very odd nutrients. They're usually completely synthetic. They're not found anywhere in nature. So that if they ever were to leave the lab, they would essentially initiate a self-destruct pathway, and they would kill themselves in the environment. So that's one of the ethical concerns of working with bacteria.
So I think this is a question for all three awardees. Did you seek out any other programs similar to Fulbright? Is the first question. If so, which ones? Or why Fulbright over others? Who would like to answer this question?
So I'm one of those people that has like 15 backup plans. So I did look into different programs. I think if I didn't get the Fulbright, I was going to do Peace Corps. And if not, I was going to do, I don't know, like research at a different university somewhere else. And I don't know. I had a lot of options and plans. But.
Great, thank you. Yeah.
So I actually didn't have a backup plan, which was probably not very smart. So I'm really lucky that I ended up getting it. But I had ideas. I also looked at the Peace Corps, and I also looked at other ETA programs. Like Spain has a program through their government that's not a part of the Fulbright. South Korea has a program, and Japan has a program. They all have just independent programs through the government to apply to teach. I did know that I wanted to apply to teach abroad. I chose the Fulbright because I feel like it was very inclusive. They have a lot of different goals that they're working towards, and it was easy for me to kind of showcase what I could bring to the Fulbright program.
Nico, do you want to answer this too? Or not? No? Okay.
I didn't have any.
Okay, Nico says he did not have any backup plans. There's a general question here, which I'm afraid I'm going to have to answer, but I'm not sure I have the correct answer as of today, but the question is, how many international students attend the university? And I am going to say the last time I looked, it was between 11 and 12% of the university's population is international. And there's a top three countries, which are, I believe, China, India, and Korea, I'm not really sure what the third one is. And then the next question is, how many of them are Fulbright scholars? So for those of you who see Fulbright everywhere and it sounds fairly generic, there is the Fulbright U.S. student program for Fulbright students who go abroad, who are from the U.S. There is also an international Fulbright program for international students, and we have on campus, on an average, I would say somewhere between 6 and 15 every year who come from other countries. Their process is completely different than ours, by the way. And there's also a Fulbright faculty program and also a scholar program. And I believe we had 2 faculty go abroad on Fulbrights last year. I think there's another question for Nicholas. Please tell us about the percentages of your course time in the sciences and other areas. During your undergrad, yes.
I took a lot of science classes. I thought I wanted to do microbiology for a little bit, so I went pretty high up the microbiology hierarchy, and then I dropped out because I just didn't have time, and I kind of wanted to prioritize research. But then I did a lot of writing and Roman history. I think I took like 5 or 6 Roman history classes. So I just like Roman history. It's the best time period in my opinion. I don't know. Yeah. So.
Well, that concludes our program, and once again, let's give a big round of applause to Lexi, Nico, and Kelsey. I also thank today's sponsors, once again, the University of Iowa's International Programs, the University of Iowa's Honors Program, the Stanley UI Foundation for their generous financial support. And again, special financial sponsors today for Dave and Diane Martin, as well as Midwest Bank, and again, City Channel 4 for making the programs available. So, we do. Lexi, Nico, and Kelsey, a small token of our appreciation. We present you with the coveted Iowa City Foreign Relations mug. You can take it for tea. And I'm not sure in Spain if it's coffee or tea. For the primarily coffee, wine. It'll work. It'll hold liquid. So, we're adjourned.